not only for hosting us today and pulling together such a terrific and diverse group of people to have this conversation about the outlook for the United States, but in this particular case, I think they've really nailed it with the framing of this panel, which is very short and sweet and simple. What can Washington actually get done in the next 2 years, the final 2 years of President Obama's tenure in Washington? I think that's a great starting point for this conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say and where we agree, and especially where we disagree. Just this week, of course, President Obama gave his State of the Union address, and he had a fairly ambitious agenda of proposals. Just as quickly, I think there was a conversation both in Washington and around the world about what's really possible in the context of a new Republican-controlled Congress, and what is that legislative agenda. So I'd like to start with that as our starting point. We have Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker. I'll give you the right of first refusal, as they say. President Obama talked a big game. What do you think is going to emerge as the most actionable items that were in that State of the Union address?
Well, let me preface answering the question by saying, where are we? And I think the first thing that the president was trying to communicate to all of us is that the American economy is in a good position. We ended up 2014 with GDP growing at about 5%, with job growth, 3 million new jobs, the most job creation since the late 1990s, with the deficit down about 2/3, with healthcare costs really moderating, with 10 million more Americans having healthcare coverage, and with record exports. 2013, about $2.3 trillion of exports, and it looks like in 2014 we'll beat that number. So the United States is sitting in a good position from an economic standpoint. Of course, the president pointed out to all of us that middle-class wages have not been rising, and that we need to really address that as a challenge. And obviously, with unemployment coming down, with opportunities rising, we can talk more about that as an agenda item. But in terms of a legislative agenda, the president laid out a number of things that I think are doable. First of all, trade agreements. We need to pass, and he was very explicit, asking for trade promotion authority from Congress. And I believe that is doable. And the reason I believe it's doable is that once it's really understood that we're not talking about trade agreements of 20 years ago, we're talking about the situation today in the 21st century. It's really imperative for us to create a fair and level playing field for American businesses globally. You know, importing into or selling, if you bring your goods into the United States from a foreign country, you face on average, about a 1.5% tariff. But if you want to sell your goods from the United States, let's say autos or chemicals or agriculture, you could face anywhere from 30 to 100% tariff. And so this is about fairness, market access, level playing field. It's also about our values. How do we create trade around the world where our labor standards are more commensurate with the labor standards we have in the United States? Environmental standards are high, where there's intellectual property protection. So this is an opportunity for America to lead, and a place where I think there's common ground between the administration and the Republican Congress.
Well, that's right. I was going to bring in Congressman McHenry. This is one where you may have more trouble with Democrats in the president's own party than with Republicans. Are Republicans willing to give President Obama a win on something that may be supported by many Republicans, but nonetheless this would count as a big legislative victory for him?
Well, this is really about the American people and jobs and access to goods and services and be able to sell goods and services around the world. It's not a win for the president or a lose for this group or whatever else. It should be a win for the American people. Ambassador Froman's done a yeoman's task in working through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And so if you look, certainly the Senate, the votes are there to pass trade promotion authority, as well as TPP. But in the House, it's going to be really the duty for Republicans to carry the most weight on this. And the president's going to have to do a major amount of lifting in order to bring even a portion of the Democrats in the House along. They're largely not free traders to any degree. I have worked on this issue with Ambassador Froman because of the nature of my district and the region. and also as a matter of making sure we have votes there. The president's going to have to do a major amount of lifting in order to bring even a portion of the Democrats in the House along. They're largely not free traders to any degree. I have worked on this issue with Ambassador Froman because of the nature of my district and in the region, and also as a matter of making sure we have votes there to pass this trade agreement. It's important.
So you think you have the votes on your side?
We're going to work through that. And we're committed to work through that, and the Speaker has said that to the President as well. So I think trade is an area where we can work together. I do think that's real. I do think that's significant. Unfortunately for me, I heard the President talk through about half of his State of the Union was about issues that he knows are dead on arrival. He brought up the same tax increase that he's been bringing up when he had supermajorities in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate with his party. He couldn't get it passed then. He's certainly not going to get it passed with the Republican House. That's unfortunate. I wanted to hear him talk more about comprehensive tax reform, and I think that's doable. I think we can do some rational things when it comes to immigration, when it comes to high-skilled visas, and making sure that those that come to the United States for education can stay and work and participate in our society. I think we can do some maybe not all that the President desires on immigration, but we could probably get half of it done, 2/3 of it done in a bipartisan way without much controversy. I think we need to do that. I think we need to start on that when it comes to doing the right things for border security, internal enforcement first, and then moving on to ag and high-tech workers. Those are areas where I think we can work together. The other thing is infrastructure. And tax reform can be paid for to ensure that we have modern infrastructure, and so we can be more competitive around the globe. I think that's really that should be the agenda. And the final piece, of course, is regulation. What we see is after this last election, 70% of the state legislative chambers in America are controlled by Republicans. A majority of governors are Republicans. You're seeing Democrat and Republican governors as incubators for ideas when it comes to regulation. Washington needs to catch up. Our securities laws need to catch up. Our regulations and rules for businesses and need to catch up. And I think that can add more oomph to this nascent recovery we have.
I want to come back to the Republican Congress and how it's going to be different than the last Congress was. But you've invoked a governor, a Democratic governor, as the case may be here. Do you agree that the initiative has passed from Washington to the states in some ways?
Well, in certain places where we've had just dysfunction and logjams, immigration. I mean, a lot of what now we can be optimistic about. And I haven't met a governor yet who's not incurably optimistic by nature. But governors are much less partisan, and we generally do work together, and I think are committed to trying within the governors. The National Governors Association is working towards trying to find. Is there a place in immigration that governors can get behind? Can we support the Export-Import Bank? If you really want to expand exports, how do we make sure that we governors come to a consensus, and then we talk to our congressional representatives of both parties and say, this is going to be long-term, help us be able to do more exports. So those kinds of things. Governors also, I mean, we got to get stuff done. So we sit with the cabinet members or with the president himself. I was out there a couple weeks ago, and he was very forthright that he would do everything he could to cut red tape and regulation, bureaucracy, that if we were willing to build infrastructure, one way to build more would be to be able to build it faster. Instead of having every permit process go in a sequential one after the other, do a whole series of permitting processes or parts of a permit process, do them parallel and cut what would take 5 years or 7 years down to 1.5 years. That saves you money, it makes the project go faster, gets you better pricing, and you're able to build more infrastructure for the same money. And I think if we do a few of these projects, I think that hopefully that'll stimulate Congress. Although I think Congress, again, the optimist I am, I think Congress is going to work together. Even immigration, I'm quite hopeful that there'll be some, a good compromise. Nobody's really happy.
So
right?
we're going to come back next year and we're going to have the conversation about how that optimism played out. I want to get back to Colorado as a laboratory, arguably one of the most interesting laboratories right now in the United States for policy experiments. But I want to bring in first Andrew Liveris, who is operating in the real economy as opposed to the Washington economy, as the CEO of a huge multinational corporation. First of all, do you agree with these relatively rosy assessments of the U.S. economy at this point? And how much do you think that President Obama does or doesn't deserve credit for that?
So I want to pick up from where Penny was with her assessment of the U.S. economy today. And if you think of the global economy in its various forms, the U.S. economy is the strongest engine on our aircraft of the global economy.